present, we have Vice President Billing, Director Dan Sullivan, and President Maria Perkins. Debbie Isaacs is not feeling well this morning, so she may not make it, but she did give her inputs on what she wanted to make sure I give to her. And I thought we were expecting Mr. Hope, but I'm not sure. Did you hear from him?
I have no contact with John.
Okay. Well, maybe he
I
shows
haven't
up.
had very little, seldom, he's sort of goes his own way.
Yeah, well, he may be late. He did say he was going to come, so we'll see. So the reason we're having this orientation is, let me put this way. The reason we're having this orientation is so that we as a board are on the same page with moving forward as a group. What we're going to talk about today are several things that are going to wind up becoming policy items that we talk about to vote on in a regular board meeting. But it's good to get it out now so that we all are on the same page with how we want to address several items. So I'm going to go down the line, and the first thing is, in accordance with our bylaws, if we have any conflicts of interest, we need to identify those up front. So I'm going to ask anyone here if they have a conflict of interest that they want to make public.
I have none.
Okay.
Neither do I.
Okay. Ms. Isaacs did indicate she does have a conflict of interest as a realtor, and she indicated that she has no desire to sell Fort property to collect profit from that. So she did want to make sure that we had that on record. The second thing is to confirm the regular board meeting dates and times. They're currently the third Wednesday of the month at 9:30 in the morning. Does that still work for everybody?
Yes.
No problem.
Okay, and
No worries.
Ms. Isaacs indicated as such, and I'll have to ask Mr. Hope if he's still good. The next thing is to discuss a formal tour of the fort and introduction to the staff, and then I'd like to try to schedule a date for that. The purpose of the tour is this is just for the board, and the board will tour all of the facilities that the association owns and be given a short briefing on each of those facilities. The executive officer or a designated representative will talk to any issues with that facility, positive things maybe that are happening with the facility, and offer any information if they'd like to the board for us to consider. And this could possibly take more than a day to complete, so I don't expect for this to happen in one swoop. But the end result is that the board will have an understanding of all of the assets that we have, and that we've put eyes on each of these facilities to be better equipped to understand what the needs are for our association, especially when we're making decisions on them. Ms. Isaacs had suggested 13 or 14 May. 13 or 14 May. Would either of those dates work?
I have a question.
Sure.
When it's presented to the full board for a vote, will there be an itemized list of the particular facilities so that we know exactly what facilities we're talking about?
We're going to actually create an agenda of like what day we're going to go see what, how much.
A proposed schedule of what you're going to tour and when you're going to tour it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll see everything that we're going to look at. But as far as dates, does anybody have issues with those dates that she?
No.
I don't, not at this time I'm not aware of, but
Okay.
I didn't bring my calendar with. I have scattered appointments here and there. Some of them are adjustable.
Okay. Let's see. And then the next one is to discuss a program that I'd like to see if the board will adopt as a policy, and that's a director on call program. And what the thought process with the director on call program is it serves two purposes. One, to give all directors an equal opportunity to participate in the daily happenings of the association as required. So it doesn't mean we're in there micromanaging. And the second is to formalize an interaction with the executive officer and the board. In the past, board members have just shown up to the buildings and had conversations with staff, which is fine, but this program will formalize how the board members interact with staff. They will essentially, the thought process is that since not all 5 of us are always here, as indicative with this half of the table.
Good thing I'm here.
I know, it's good. I'd be talking to myself. We do, but we're not voting on anything right now, so we're fine. But the thought process is that we should designate one board member each month to be on call to respond to whatever it is that administration may need. And that one person, which is what we were going to talk about, what they can and can't do, but that one person would be delegated to do whatever is necessary to assist the EO or whatever administrative staffer needs assistance from a board member. So if you don't want to participate, the director can opt out of doing that. You'd be on call for a month. The start date would be the day after the regular board meeting. So for example, in April, our board meeting is the 17th. So the effective date for the director on call would be the 18th through the day of the following board meeting. And then that individual would assist in creating the agenda for that meeting. So then all the board members equally are able to contribute at some point in time to creating agendas, to dealing with the daily operations, and get a better understanding of what it is that actually happens in the office. So if you want to opt out of it, you can, but you would have to do it in writing, stating that you want to opt out of participating in the Director on Call program if it's something that we vote to pass. A list of who will have what month. We would talk about that in advance and write it out so that if there are conflicts, like if somebody's going on a trip, I know I'm leaving in June for a couple of weeks, so I probably would be a bad person to be the Director on Call for that month, but there's 4 other people, so we can look at that and see who would be getting what month. And then if during that month you have an extended absence, like you get called on a trip or something, then we have a protocol in place of how to get your replacement, because we just go right down the line. And the Director on Call would only be called into the front office if they are needed. They wouldn't be coming up here every day making rounds, if you will. We need to remove a daily interaction of the board just showing up unannounced and allow the staff to actually focus on their job so that they can do what they need to do, and if they need us, we're there to assist. So what we would need to talk about, first of all, if anybody has an objection to doing this kind of a program.
I have no objection.
What program are you referring to? Not
The Director on Call program. So is there any objection to even?
I don't know, well, it was quite extensive in here and specific, so I would have to contemplate it more, but I guess if I have an objection, I can just opt out.
You can choose to opt out. If you don't want to be on call for a month, then you can just put it down in writing. I don't want to do
I mean,
this.
the duties that seemed to be assigned to it were quite extensive and very specific procedurally, and I don't know if I've digested and contemplated all that, what the responsibilities are.
Well, yeah, and I actually wanted to talk about them, because if some of them shouldn't be there, then we can remove them. Or if there's something that's not in there, then we should add it.
Sure.
So you don't have an objection to even doing the program?
I have no objection
Okay.
to putting it forth or doing the program, no.
Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and talk about what the Director on Call would be able to do.
Yeah.
I made a list of things that I just kind of started adding, and Debbie added a few things, and so the parameters to which the Director on Call can address. This is all proposed. The director on call will be authorized to sign transfers if all paperwork has been completed with no issues. Is that kosher?
Some things I think have to be signed by the president.
Actually, I did look at that. I looked at that, and as the president, I can delegate that authority, as long as it's in writing that I'm delegating that authority. So I'm willing to do that, to delegate that authority to the director on call. So do we have issues with allowing the director on call to sign transfers if all paperwork has been completed with no issues? There's no issues with it.
I don't know.
Okay. Except give backs if there's a zero balance on the account.
Can someone explain?
I was gonna say,
exactly what
Mr.
that
Sullivan
means?
might be able to explain that a little bit
Yeah.
better.
Well, give backs don't always have a zero balance.
Right.
Okay.
And so, I think, for instance, someone with a FRM membership, and they've fallen behind 3, 4, 5 months or something, I don't know why they should even be that far behind, but if they are, and it happens, I think we should be able to accept that give back and get our records cleared, and, it's a write-off, it's part of doing business.
So the give back is, sorry, I don't really know, that's when somebody's giving their property back to the Tea Association, is that what that means?
Membership.
The membership, okay.
It could be an
Okay.
FRM membership,
Okay.
on a rare occasion, it is a regular membership and a lot.
Mhm.
And in fact, we got a lot, we also got a house. I don't know when we got it, I wasn't aware of it, but I know we ended up owning it. I know it was privately owned for sale before, so I understand that was given back. Did a lot of pestering. Finally, last week, there was a for sale sign in front of it, and the yard was mowed.
Awesome.
So we were sitting with this vacant house that is worth some dollars that we should be collecting, and then getting someone in there paying association fees.
So with that, do we really need that give back to have a zero balance to just accept it back then? Because,
Well, like Mr. Sullivan said, they might have a balance. So
Right.
are we going, I guess it's twofold, like, are we going to just say, yeah, that's fine, have a balance and we'll absorb it? Or are we going to expect that there will be a negotiation made to where it is a zero balance by the time that you're gonna give back? So,
and whose responsibility is that gonna be?
well, that's administration's responsibility to work out the payment plan if they're gonna catch up to their payments.
Right.
But
But if that process has already happened and they've already said, I'm not giving you another dime, I mean, what?
well, that would be outside of this realm of zero balance. So then that would be something that would have to come either to the EO to make the decision and bring it to the board for a final decision, or to pursue whatever,
Collection methods.
collection
Okay.
procedures. So I'm just saying, as long as it's a zero balance, whether that means, like, we'll use me because I'm easy to use. If I have a $4,500 balance on my account and I just want to give my membership back, and I don't want to pay, well then the director on call will not be signing that give back, because that's now a complicated situation.
That makes sense. Okay.
But if I say, yeah, let me give you a $4,500 check, there you go, I would now have a zero balance, so then I can give my membership back, and the director on call would be able to sign that.
Okay, I like that.
Would that be suitable, you think, or?
Well, I think if you want to limit the director and call's authority to sign that, I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I see a problem with, it's not my problem, it's a problem of the association, is someone is going to give back a membership and they still owe us money, which is often the case. That's why they're giving it back in most cases. And we're going to say, well, we're not going to accept that. Okay, what's the alternative? What's our enforcement options? We can, if it's a regular property, we can spend $2,000 to foreclose on the property because we wouldn't take it back when we wanted to give it back. Or on an FRM, there is no practical enforcement leverage.
We don't have anything already codified of how that process happens? That's not written down somewhere? I mean, I don't know, I'm asking.
Well, the only thing that's written down is that they have a membership monthly dues to pay.
Okay,
And if they don't pay them, the membership should be canceled
right.
promptly, I would say, within 60 days or 90 days, unless they come in and made arrangements to pay it. But if they haven't and they just say, I'm done, I don't want to be an FRM, here's your membership, what are you going to do? Either take it or say no. But it's not worth making a big issue out of for what you're talking about, because you're simply talking about whether or not that director on call is authorized to sign that give back.
Maybe what we need to do is address the entire process of what we do if there is that situation, from top to bottom, because that should be, like, to your point, there should be a timeline established that says, okay, you've got X amount of time to come forward and say, look, I'm having problems making my payments, make arrangements, whatever. We need to cover all of that. Maybe we need to do that. Maybe we don't necessarily need to include this in here right now. We need to establish that policy.
There is, Bill, there is a process for that, so you might want to just review what that process is and tweak it or do whatever.
Well, where is that process written?
Memo has it, right? Mr. Guzman, you would have that? Is that his
Yes,
job?
it would be found in the declarations, I believe.
Okay.
Under assessments. They're supposed to be given a letter with, a 30-day notice and
Sure.
all these notices and that are dictated by the property code.
So for the sake of this though, if it has a 0 balance, then we're okay with the director on
Yeah,
call?
then it's
So,
sure.
yeah, okay. And then, serve as a mediator for member disputes if required. Because I know that we've had some issues before where we've had disgruntled members in the front, and sometimes board members are called in to deal with that. So is this a reasonable thing to ask them to be a mediator if required?
I think if the executive officer feels it's necessary, I don't really have an issue with that, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. And then along with the EO, be the approval authority to address individual requests for Fort Clark Springs open gate. So instead of every single request having to come to the whole board,
do it a whole year ahead.
we would establish, in a little bit, we're gonna talk about that, establishing dates that we already are okay with to have an open gate. But then for just one that I know now, right now, that's happening this weekend, like the garden club. If they wanna have an open gate to say, hey, we want to showcase our flowers and do that, I don't think it's necessary to bring that to the full board if we're okay with giving the EO and the director on call the trust to make a good decision on whether or not that's good for the association. But how do you gentlemen feel about it?
My feelings are, it makes sense to me.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
yeah, okay. Gosh, this is getting too easy, so.
You want me to argue? You supposed
Yeah,
to argue?
yeah, you should. And then additionally, the director on call would have first right of refusal to represent the board at meetings. So like the chamber meetings, if we're being asked to provide a representative to go to a meeting, or if a specific group, like Unit 1 maybe, is asking for a board member to come to their meeting, well then the director on call would get that first right of refusal. And if not, then we can go down the line and say, well, director on call can't go, who can attend this? Are we okay with that?
Sure.
Yes.
They wouldn't be able to provide any guarantee that the fort would do something, but at least they'd be able to come back and tell the board, well, this is what happened and whatnot.
Yeah, no problem with that.
Okay. And then they would assist the president in creating the regular meeting agenda. So,
I have a question on that.
sure.
You are also serving as a director on call, as I understood the more detailed information that you sent.
Mm-hmm.
And so the month that you're the director on call, and you're also the president,
I would ask the person who's my fill-in, like the one below me, to come do it with me.
the next one in line.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. Unless you don't think I should be a director on call. Then I can just sit there and say, hey, go do it. But do you think that's reasonable? Because I do think that 2 people should have eyes on it.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
And then any other tasks that we identify that maybe the director on call should do that. Then the standard other duties as assigned, kind of a tagline.
I've got nothing off the top of my head that I feel like we need to add, but if we need to add it in the future.
But I think Mr. Sullivan may, I mean, is there
Oh.
stuff that has come up that would be a good thing for, like, that you maybe have been called in to address, or that as you were up here, you found yourself needing to be part of it as solution?
No, I think in the past, in the 2 years previous to this last year, when I was a secretary, I only got called now and then to sign a check. They needed somebody, as I was yesterday. In fact, on my way to Del Rio, I had to stop and quickly sign a check. But I also never made a habit of coming in and popping in. I was up there many times talking with Richard as president to take care of business, but never ever made a decision on anything or ever gave him any instructions. But in other words, I didn't stop by just to chat and say, hey, how are you? What's going on today? You know, that, I think you don't need to interrupt his workday with that type of stuff.
Right, and I think that's kind of the meat of this program, that he's going to always have, and not even just him, like if maybe Mr. Rodriguez or one of the other managers, they need a board input on something, they would have that director already that they know that they're supposed to call for that. The exception is the treasurer, because she's got like full blanket approval to go with the finances and do what needs to be done there. But do you think we should add that the director on call would be the second signature for checks?
Sure.
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Yeah. Is there anything else that you think we should add?
Yeah, there's one thing, I don't know if we've hit a spot where it should be talked or whether it's coming up on it. You can tell me, and that's the issue of not including the executive officer in the email discussions between the directors.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little
That's
further
coming
down.
up?
It will. Okay, so then is there anything else that we want to give authority to the director on call for?
No.
Okay. So the next thing is we're going to talk about the dates / holidays that we are going to say the fort will be open to the public. And whether or not the board is going to delegate approval authority to grant exceptions to publish policy for an open gate to the EO and to the director on call. And so we're not voting on this right now. This would be an action item to be added in the April agenda, which is next week. So let me read my notes here. So the purpose for the open gate must be beneficial to Fort Clark Springs, its membership, and not for personal gain. And so that would be an exception, and all exceptions to policy would be submitted in writing to the EO no later than 1 month prior to the requested date. Is that something that we think is realistic?
I have no opinion
Fine with that.
Okay. And the dates that I was looking really at like our historical data with the dates, and so these are the proposals, and there may be more, which Mr. Sullivan, you may have more in your forefront of what we've done in the past. But April 21st, which is Easter Sunday, so that we can have the sunrise service if it's hosted by Fort Clark Springs. The July 4th, the day of July 4th. Non-members must pay required usage fees for amenity use, so that would be the pool. If they're going to go use the pool, they've got to pay for it. May 25th through 27th, which is Memorial Day weekend. Non-members must pay required usage fees for amenity use. August 30th through September 2nd, Labor Day weekend. Non-members must pay required usage fees for amenity use. October 31st for Halloween, so we can have the trick-or-treating. So are there dates that I'm missing or dates that we don't like?
We've got the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Halloween, and am I missing?
Easter as well, for Easter Sunday service.
Yeah.
What about the week? I mean, I know it's already come and gone this year. What about spring break?
The with that. Do we wanna have that open?
Kids are out of school, I mean, why not make it a little bit more inviting and say, hey, come out of the pool for a little while?
Got an issue with that?
Yeah, I don't have any problem.
The only thing is we're gonna have to make sure if we do that, that we coordinate with maintenance getting the pool clean, because that's not in their regular cleaning cycle, if you will. They don't normally start cleaning until, what is it, Memorial Day weekend or whatever,
Right.
regularly.
Right.
So,
Well, it's looked pretty.
no, they've done a good job, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, it's one of those
That-
things, it'd be nice if we're gonna do that, we did
That
it.
would be for that whole weekend or that whole
I would like to see it for the whole week,
weekend before and weekend after.
that's what I would like to see, yeah. I mean, I know some people go out of town, but not everybody does, so. You good with that?
Yeah, if Mr. Sullivan's good with it, I'm good with it. You okay with that?
Sure.
You gonna be able to go to the pool at spring break?
Would it be open to them free of charge or would?
No. They would have to pay to use the amenity.
Okay.
If they're not a member, I mean,
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
I have no issue with that. I would probably like to see us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with this today. I would like to see us get to a point where we do have some sort of free, thing where we can encourage, especially the kids in our community, to come in and use the pool at no cost, even if it's only just one weekend a year or something. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be attached to this decision.
We can
So
work towards that.
we can do that down the road. We can pick a different weekend, maybe in the summer when we know it's gonna be nice, because frankly, spring break, it's not necessarily nice every year.
No.
So, but for this purpose, I don't have another week or holiday in mind that we haven't necessarily covered that we need to right now. I think this is open-ended. I think we can adjust it as we go, so.
We can. But historical big events, I mean, do we wanna put Fort Clark Days on there? Fort Clark Days? Do we wanna put that here?
You mean
Oh, instead of
for-
having to approve it every year? Oh, please, yes.
Yeah. Any other large event that we know that we have?
Not that I'm thinking of.
What do you think, Mr. Sullivan? What about that? Who hosts that Christmas home tour thing? Is that a
Oh.
Fort sponsored thing?
I wanna say yes. Is it
I
the
think
Historical Society?
I believe it's, I'm not sure, I believe it's the Kinney County Historical
Okay, so then they
Society,
would.
but I'm not sure.
It's Art Council.
No?
It's the Art
Anybody
Council.
know?
Art Council.
Kinney County Art Council.
Okay.
Kinney County Art Council. So that sounds like Kinney County.
I had part of it, right? Kinney
You
County.
did. You had half of it. Well, then maybe that, because that's not a Fort sponsored event, then I don't know that we want that in there.
But
I don't have an
it
issue adding it
involves
to
the
the
fort
list.
because
Okay.
there's always some of the homes here,
Right, and we've been doing it for how long now? A long time, right?
so long as I
Christmas.
know.
I have no issue adding that at all.
Tour of homes. Between now and next week, I'll find, or now and tomorrow, when we have to finalize this, I'll find the real name for it. Trying to think what else was.
Goes the church.
Well, what do we feel about Ghost of the Tours?
Are we gonna do it?
We don't sponsor that.
No, I know, but is it going to happen?
I don't know.
I would say let's wait until we're approached with it, and then we'll just,
Okay.
we can add it as a yearly thing if we're approached and told it's going to happen yearly.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good to
Talk
me.
about the Christmas tour of homes.
No, I'm
No,
sorry,
the
the ghostly
ghostly
tours, because
tours.
we didn't have one last year, so if community council wants to do it
Well,
again and they tell
They
us,
did have one last year.
We
Okay.
had one.
oh, I'm sorry,
So I'm just
It's-
gonna remind the
Got
audience
it.
very politely, like, let us talk it out, and if we've got something that's inaccurate, we'll write it down and just tell us later. But I
So-
really wanna get through this long list of stuff.
I feel like if community council approaches us and says, we're gonna do this annually, yeah, we'll just add it to the list, and I don't have any issue with that. Does that sound good?
Yep, so we'll wait for a community council report on that. Okay, are there any other dates that we wanna just put on here now?
I don't have any more.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, do you have any?
No.
So, the next thing is talking about town hall meetings. There's always a debate on, and we're gonna talk about the agenda and stuff later in this list of stuff. But there's always a debate on what's the best way to hear member feedback, to assess issues, and to move forward with those. And one thing that we did start in this last board was we did one town hall meeting. I thought it was productive. I thought it was well run. I thought it was. But what I also think is that instead of having to hash it out at a board meeting to say, well, are we going to have another one, or oops, it's time to look at one, that maybe we just say right now, these are town hall dates, and have that published so that as the time approaches, we're not saying, well, let's pick a date. We're saying, here's a reminder of this event. So I looked at the calendar, and I tried to give us a reasonable amount of time to where it was about 3 or 4 months between each one. And they're actually, Mr. Sullivan, they're in that staple document right there. Just to save you from writing it down again.
Second page, I think.
It's page number 2. So just that page you've got held up right there. Just flip that page over. Yes, sir. The first page.
Oh, the first page?
Yes, sir. Towards the bottom of the page.
June 1st, October 26th,
Yes, sir.
and February 1st and June 6th,
Yes.
2020.
And I do have, there's a correction. It should be February 1st, 2020. Yeah, no, I just looked at it over. Yeah, well, can't go back in time. So, do those, I mean, now all of us don't have to be there, but the goal is that members will be able to come in politely and respectfully, give their issues. We're not going to be able to give them answers right then and there, most likely, for everything, but we can at least take it. And then, because we've got these other ones scheduled, as things come along, they can use that route, or they can contact us if in the meantime it needs to happen. But does anyone see issues with these dates? These are all Saturdays. And
Yeah.
I didn't put a time on it because I figure we can
Yeah.
figure the time.
I mean, dates to me aren't even an issue. I mean, I think it's nice to know ahead of time. I know we have some concerned members that would love to know when these things are going to happen so they can actually plan to be there for them. So I like the idea of laying them out in advance.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, do you have issues with
Yeah,
any?
no, I love town hall meetings. Go
Okay.
for it.
Yeah, I mean, you did a great job with the first one that we did, so
Well,
we just need to keep that momentum.
I proposed the one that we had last year. There should have been more, but so much stuff gets going that you just don't get to it. So by obligating yourself to that ahead of time is probably a good idea.
Okay. Cool. So then, so we'll have those. And so the next thing is how the agenda is generated. And you are going to be probably more helpful in making sure that this is legit. But as I was going through it, because I'm preparing my first agenda, what I would like to see us do is be a lot more organized with how we communicate amongst ourselves to build the agenda. Because I know what was happening in the past was you would send out a request, hey, do you have anything? And then you might get crickets, you might get something, we don't know. And so what I'd like to propose is that, well, what we will be doing is, in order to add a topic to the agenda for anybody, like this is anybody who wants to add a topic, the topic needs all the information. If there are questions or information missing, it's just not going to get on the agenda. Because I found a lot of times we're trying to backtrack and figure out the details as we're supposed to be making the decision, and that's just not really conducive to making good choices, well-informed choices. A member, committee, or group may request to add an item to the agenda if the topic is submitted to a board member of their choice no later than 10 days prior to the meeting for consideration. So they can send to any of us what they want, and you as the board member that receives it, if you can answer all the questions and you're able to provide all the information and you think it needs to come onto the agenda, then at that point in time, you would be able to do that. If you think it needs more information, well, then it's your prerogative to kick it back and ask for more information or whatever you need to. But members should be able to request something, and we should have it in writing how they can do it.
They are, and they should, and they always have been. And I'm not sure, so I won't be able to answer your question, where is it written, but I think it is written somewhere.
I've looked and I didn't see it in writing anywhere,
Well,
so.
there's so much as far as between the property codes,
Mhm.
this thick,
Right.
Yes.
Right here.
yeah,
Yes.
so, but at any rate, it doesn't hurt to restate it.
And then again, the request must include all the details and supporting documentation if there's any required supporting documentation. Any item requiring expenditure of funds requires 3 bids or a formal letter of rationale why there is not 3 bids. So I understand that for some things there might just be a specialty that only one company can provide. That's reasonable, but there just needs to be supporting documentation to say that. Additionally, this is something that has not been done in the past. It would require identifying the budget impact. Was it budgeted? If not, why? And then also something not included in the past was requiring a completed timeline for when this project will be done. So it's one thing to say, I want to buy this, here's the budget impact, but then to have a lingering infinitive timeline behind that is just really not reasonable. So I understand that things happen and timelines sometimes aren't met, but if you're going to take the time to ask to spend money, then you should know the budget impact. You should also know how long it's going to take you to complete this. And in that whole process, we may discover that we might have to pay somebody to do an installation instead of rely on volunteer work, you know? And if that's the case, well, then we need to talk about that cost up front as opposed to be surprised with it later. So does anyone have any issues with those requests?
I want to add something.
Oh,
I'd like
sure.
to suggest an addition anyways.
Yeah.
For the timelines, I think, I like that. But what I think needs to happen is if that original established timeline is not met, it should be the responsibility of the director that put this item on the agenda in the first place to update at the meetings what the reason for the delay is and what the new timeline is. So basically, if I put something on the agenda that requires an expenditure, it's now my responsibility to make sure the association stays updated with what's going on with that project until it is completed.
Okay, and so what happens if it's the executive officer asking for that?
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing.
What do you think, Mr. Sullivan? What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
You're too amenable today.
Yeah, no, I think, in fact, dealing with contractors, that's very common, that you have a penalty clause at the end if they don't meet the timeline. But, and as far as who should be responsible for the updates on it, that's, I agree, whoever brought forth the project should be the one.
Anything else with expenditure fund requests? Like this is if we want to put it on the agenda and ask for money.
No, everything else I was good with.
So the timelines for the agenda. And this is where you're going to be very helpful because I'm kind of just going off of the calendar and what we've done in the past. So 10 days prior to the meeting, all directors will submit their inputs. And we can say by noon, by 5 o'clock, it doesn't matter. 8 days prior to the meeting, so this will give us 2 days to say, okay, well, I've got questions about this and what's the other information for this particular item. Nope, this is not full, we need more information. If they can't provide the information, then we'll kick it to next month. 8 days prior to the meeting, a draft agenda will be produced by the president and the director on call. 7 days prior to the meeting, the draft agenda is presented to the directors via email for email vote or changes. So before this is going public, the directors are looking at the whole agenda with supporting documentation for those action items and saying yes or no, I think this is a great agenda, I think we need to consider this at a different time. But before it goes out for the proper notice, the board has already agreed to that agenda. And directors will be given 24 hours to respond with their vote or input, and all the deadlines will be included in that email. Does anyone take issue with that?
Nope. It's fine.
And then we have a 72-hour notice that we have to provide for everybody. So if we follow this, we will have been able to meet that metric as well, even possibly get it out sooner. So, and then complete board packets will be due to directors by the Friday prior to the meeting. That way you have time to read everything else that will wind up being included in that packet. And again, I do know extenuating circumstances occur, but because we'll have a director on call assisting and the president there, between our assistance with the administrative staff, if they've got some issues that they need help, then we can come in and help them do that and try to get that done. But, so are there any issues with the timelines? Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah,
Yes.
and we always, I think except for one time, got the director's packages out by Friday. And part of the reason is because, of course, the staff isn't working on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the 72-hour notice, rather than going out 9:30 Sunday morning, send it out Friday afternoon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But do you think it's realistic, a 10-day timeline with the 8 days to chew on it and?
You know, all the timelines for getting stuff in that you're talking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you did it for a year, so you would know what,
Yeah.
if it would work. All right, so then we all know this. I have a tendency to be long-winded, and as a result, meetings do go long. So what I'd like to try for the actual meeting itself is when we're on an agenda item, I spent about 5 hours watching other board of director meetings in different parts of the state of Texas. And what most of them do is they go right down the line and give every director an opportunity to give their input on what they think for that action item, and they're limited to 3 minutes. And they've got all the prep, so we would have all the prep for what we need, and we would have been able to chew on all of these issues. So each one we go down the line, 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes. And I even bought a timer, which I want to see if we like this, if you would be willing to do the timer.
In fact, I was going to propose, but you already have done it, the timeline on discussions. A little different than yours, so I was going to propose a 3-minute initial and then a second shot at it for 2 minutes, and that's it, rather than your third 2 minutes. And so what you have to look at, I think, and consider, and I'm not saying, you can go any way you want, but if you give 3, 2, 2, that's 7 minutes, you got 5 directors, that's 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That potentially, probably won't, I understand that, but technically you could spend 35 minutes plus the time in between on each item.
Mm-hmm.
And you can then order lunch in for the directors.
Yeah, whoever talked the most has
That's
to
a
pay.
valid point. If we can't get
Yeah.
it done in 2 rounds, maybe we need to push it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what if we did 1 round and labeled it 5 minutes? That way everybody got their fair minute. There's 5
One
minutes.
round, who?
So like for instead of 3 minutes per person, 1 minute per person. You got a minute. Say what you gotta say. Though it takes 5 minutes for that round. What do you think? And then the next, if we need another round, then we take the 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever.
Well, each director would get 3 minutes.
Well, no, like going off of what you're saying, instead of making the whole thing 3 minutes in length, and giving everybody everybody has to say what they want to say in 3 minutes total. We could give everybody 1 minute, and so it would take 5 minutes for that first go around with a timer.
I kind of like the idea of having
Or-
2 minutes on the initial round minimum. So what if we did 2 and 2? 2 minutes for the first round, 2 minutes for a second round, and then if that's not enough, then obviously we haven't discussed it far enough to make a vote.
So
How does
2
that
minutes
sound? I think
each?
2 minutes each. Just 2 rounds, 2 minutes each.
Yeah, we can do
Is that
that.
okay?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. And then we call the vote. But the other thing I want to incorporate into that, because one of the challenges is how do we let members have an input in what we're doing? Are we going to let members have an input in what we're doing? I think it's important that we give them an opportunity, but I also think that just like we're timing ourselves to put ourselves under a time limit, that we should do that with the members. So instead of giving members an opportunity to make remarks on action items before we talk about the action item, how would we feel about me opening, well, we open the floor for discussion, and after that first round, we've done our 2 minutes, I open the floor for 3 total minutes. And in 3 total minutes, members get to say what they want to say about that action item. And we're not engaging with them, we're just listening and taking their note of what they have to say. And then if we need that second round of discussion for 2 minutes, then we're taking that. This is an experiment. I don't know if it'll work.
I like the idea of giving the members the input after
Yeah.
they've sort of heard the initial discussion about it, because I know me coming to board meetings, a lot of times the first I was hearing about it was right there.
Right.
Procedurally though, I'm trying to think, is 3 minutes enough, and then how are we gonna organize that? Are we gonna have them sign up the back like they have been doing, or, okay, so if we give them 3 minutes, or whatever time we give them, how are we going to break that down per individual person? So if we're gonna allow people to sign up, you know what I mean? Like, we need to decide.
What we could do is, like, what happens now, what happened in the past was you would look at the list of people, and I'm pretty sure you just kind of took a guess of, okay, we've extended our time here and moved forward, or at whatever point in time it seems too long. But what we could do is, let's say we have 3 action items, and for action item number 1, we put little ticks of, okay, who needs to sign up to have their input for this particular action item. So let's say for action item number 1, we have 3 people. Well, we know we're opening it up for 3 minutes, so they'll each have up to a minute. And unless you sign up, you don't get to talk. And then maybe action item number 2, we have 6 people. Well, you get 30 seconds, my friend. And then we have a timer, which I bought. It's in my bag. And then if you're willing to do the time, I think you'd be the perfect person for the time. Just because I'm a bad person for the time, since I take too much time. I'm admitting it. Like, I'm admitting that. But would you be willing to do the time? Would you be willing first? And
I think, first of all, it's very difficult. This is a difficult question. On the surface, it sounds simple.
it does.
But in order to give the proper input to the members and to keep control of the meeting and to keep it within a reasonable time, it's not easy to figure out.
Well-
You're talking about it, and then when you say sign up ahead of time, there's gonna be a lot of people that don't have anything to say until they've heard the board discuss it.
Yeah, I was just
So,
thinking that too.
Well, and so then another option to that, because I've watched different variations of it. So one of the variations was that when the president opens the floor for discussion, I could simply say, do we have any members that have a comment regarding this? And if 6 hands go up, then say, okay, you each have 30 seconds to come and say what you need to say. And this isn't an interrogation on the board. This is your input on, okay, here's how I think this is going to work or not work. Please consider this. If we tell them the rules up front, it makes it easier for us to enforce them, as opposed to just make rules up on the fly.
I would,
So we could do that if you think.
I would throw out for consideration that we've had open for input from members prior to the going into the action items. Maybe after the action item before a vote is taken. But that could get timely if you
It'll take a
allow,
long
but
time.
maybe if you allow 3 minutes on each action item, even if you have 5 or 6 action items, it'd be 15 to 20 minutes that you're spending. And allow them to come up and talk then, and limit, say, we're gonna be open for 3 minutes for members to have input after the board is all discussing before they vote.
So you think we should go to 2 rounds and then let them talk?
Yeah,
Okay.
just before the vote, before you take the vote, so the directors can hear, and maybe then if they have a question or something.
I like it. The one thing I'm sitting here thinking about though is, like, to your example, where you said if there's 6 members, they all get 30 seconds. Maybe we just need to limit it to, we're only gonna take 3 members, and they're all gonna get a minute, or whatever. You know what I mean? 30
We can do that
seconds
too.
is not a lot of time to make a point, really.
Fountain.
I mean, I know sometimes some people are shorter winded than I am,
I got trained to speak in 30-second intervals.
so I'm not as skilled. So I don't know, it's just a consideration. Do we just say we are only going to allow X number? And I don't even care how we pick those people. I agree with Mr. Sullivan though, some people aren't gonna know, because I've been here and done this, that they had a comment until they heard what we discussed, or what was discussed up here to begin with.
Right.
So whether we call on them out of the audience and they raise their hand or whatever is fine, but I think we should just limit it to a certain number of member comments that we are going to allow. And each person gets X amount of time to make their comment, and that way if somebody comes up and says for 10 seconds, I hate this idea and I don't like what you proposed, and walks away, well then fine, great. But we're still only gonna take that number of member comments. How does that
I
sound?
like that.
No,
Fine.
you could limit the number, we'll take comments from up to 3 members or 4, whatever you decide on.
I like 3 members
Great.
in a minute each. Does
Keep
that
it- keep it odd
sound
number.
reasonable?
I'm
I
okay
mean, we
with it. I
can
think
always
it's a great
adjust
suggestion.
this later if we don't like how this flows.
Right,
but-
this is an experiment. This
Right.
is, we're gonna see how this works, if we, to include them in this portion of the agenda item. And, but then it will also, you know, it's on me to say in the beginning, this is how this is gonna work. And hopefully we have a timekeeper.
Oh, I can
Okay.
time them.
Well, I have a clock and it makes noise. I just bought it. Just for this.
Is it like the chess thing where you
I'll
slap
get it, I'll get it.
the top of it?
Take out my old chess clock and.
You can do that
Perfect.
too.
Yeah,
That'd be
no,
cool.
and well, it's easy, and you just put the time, like 1 minute, and then it does it. It's great, and it's this little beep too. It's so cool.
But I like that system, and I
But if
like to
you're
be able to
willing
give
to, I
people
think
that
it's perfect.
opportunity to have their input before we vote. I think that's a great
So will I
idea.
be given proper training on this device?
I will train you.
On both buttons.
My 3-year-old has mastered it, so it's okay. So then, just to recap, for an agenda item, we're gonna go down the line. I'll probably do down that way. And we'll go down the line. Every director will have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes, so you might take 30 seconds, to say your point for the agenda item as we're getting ready to talk, like, just discussion. This is when I open discussion. Then we'll go a second round, if necessary, for 2 minutes each. And then I'll open the floor for 3 comments for 3 minutes. And then we will call for a vote. Does that
Sure.
sound good?
I like it.
And then if it doesn't work well then we can readjust that.
Now, I think after the comments from the members, if a director has a question, he should be able to ask it.
Sure.
Yes,
Just
definitely.
open up and say, does anybody have anything to add before we vote? Would
Yeah.
seem reasonable.
Yeah.
Just
But then we need to time that too. Because you know I can go crazy with questions.
Well, we
time
can,
the director's question.
Yes.
no.
Sure.
Yes.
Up to 2 minutes again?
I'd say up to a minute
A
even.
minute?
A minute, okay,
Because it
sure.
shouldn't take that long.
Sure, we
afterwards,
could
right?
offer a 1-minute follow-up if any directors have anything else to
Especially
add.
as fast as you talk, Bill, you can get it.
Well, I got a lot going on up here, so I'm trying to throw it out there before I forget what it was I was trying to make a point about.
But then if we give, so we'll just say, does any director have any follow-up question? And if they say they do, they've got 1 minute, which we have a timer, so it'll be timed. For last, I'm writing all this down. Okay. Okay, perfect. I think that'll streamline us quite a bit. And it'll force me definitely to calm my roll on questions. But we shouldn't have so many questions if we're able to talk about the agenda before it's even approved.
That would be the idea, yes.
Because we're going to have more information for all of these items. So the flow meeting, you know, it's going to be more streamlined. The committee reports, I'd also like to limit those to up to 3 minutes. How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I'm good, most of them are, but there's a few that do a little bit of bloviating and get off track, and it ties up in what, you know, it ties up both all the directors, and it is a directors meeting, and ties up the members to sit and listen to it go
Yeah,
on and on.
if they need to submit something extensive, they can do that in other times in other ways. Doesn't have to be here. I like that idea.
So we're
3
okay,
minutes.
up to 3 minutes.
I think that's good.
Okay. Community council. How do we want to include them in the agenda?
Technically, I feel strictly personally, that the community council should request to be on the agenda. They're not a committee of the board at all, they're a completely separate entity. And like, I know there was some discussion at the annual meeting that they weren't recognized with the other committees, but the fact is they're not a committee, they're their own organization. They're a separate 501c3 entity, and technically I think there's a possibility, I'm not an attorney, but if we start treating them as a committee of the board and they accept that treatment and go along, they would be susceptible to losing their 501c3 classification. Susceptible, I don't know that for sure, but it would be a consideration.
Do we have an established policy that sort of lays out the differences between committees, councils, clubs, groups? Because there's like different terms here, and how the board interacts with each of those.
Well, the committees of the board are those committees that have been created by a resolution and have the members appointed by the board.
And some of that's dictated in the property code, right? Like the architectural committee, for
They
example,
don't,
correct?
actually, I'm not sure,
Oh, declaration.
they don't
Oh,
cover
okay.
committees too much.
Okay.
No,
in
just the
that.
architecture committee isn't the
The
decorations.
architectural committee is, and that's a strange fellow, because it's a separate, supposed to be independent, not a committee created by the board, but yet the board appoints the members to it, and the committee is actually created by the declaration. Declaration created by, well, actually the declaration is created by the membership, they vote on it, accept it. So that's a committee, but not a committee of the board, it's their own, they're independent of the board, architectural committee.
That's kind of what I'm getting at too. The terminology should matter in the terms of how we allow these groups, whatever they are, be they a committee, a group, a council, club, whatever, to get on the agenda.
Well, and that's why we're talking about this, because like committee reports, I do think it's important to hear from the architecture, airport, golf, equine, recycling. I think those are important, but the one that is always, they're not a redheaded stepchild, but there's a perception that they feel that way, but they aren't a committee that reports to the board.
Okay.
So because if they say something, well, I'm just going to make something up, that they decided that this room needs to be purple, well, they don't get to make that choice. Whereas like historical society, if they come in and say, you know what, historically, this used to be, or preservation, this used to be purple. Well, at that point, maybe we have, hey, well, I guess if you're right, then maybe we should consider making this room purple. But if community council says that they've decided something at their meeting, we have no impact on that. The only thing we have an impact on is if they're asking for facilities or for financial support for their events. So that's where,
I think
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan, sorry.
I think the Historical Preservation Committee is separate and something different than the Historical Society. The Historical Society is another separate entity, and we never have them on the agenda, they don't come in. The Preservation Committee
I was
is
meaning
one that was
preservation, yeah.
established by the board to keep the buildings, the historic buildings up, as I understand it. The community council, once again, is like the historical, so it's its own organization, just like the Fort Clark Springs Association is its own organization, so is the community council. And we certainly want to hear from them and have input from them because we work together, hopefully intertwined. But just to automatically have them on there, if they have something to report to us or bring up or propose to us, then they should be on the agenda. But I don't know if it's every month, then fine. If they want to say we want to be on the agenda every month.
well, they don't even meet every month.
I think it's just important that it's fair. Look,
Yeah.
as long as it's the same. So
Yeah.
if you're a board committee, you're automatically on the agenda, period. If you're not, you gotta request it. I think as long as we're treating everybody fairly, that would be the way to do it.
Okay, I like that.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I do feel that way.
Okay, then we'll just do that. Use of executive session. we want to limit that to absolute necessity. Does anyone have any issues with that?
No.
No.
So funds, and Debbie had a lot of input on this. So for all association financial business, the treasurer has the first right of refusal for action, and the next in line is the director on call. Do we have issues with that?
No.
Okay. Checks.
Question,
Yes.
is it, now, I've been called during the past week a couple of times to come and sign checks, and I did ask, I said, did you call Debbie first? But is that my responsibility or the responsibility of the staff person?
It's the responsibility of the staff. It is. Because if you're getting a call and you're not director on call, then that means that the director on call may not have been available, or treasurer may not have been available, and so it's not. That's why we're lining this out now, so that they have their marching orders to know what the order of precedence is for that. So for the checks, the treasurer has first right of refusal to sign, then the director on call, then the backup director on call. So they're going to have this list of who's director on call for which month, and so that's the order they should be contacting us in.
Okay,
Do we have issues with that?
No.
no,
Okay. Transfers. So the approval authority, the board can delegate that to the treasurer, which has already been done in the past. And so what's been happening in the past is the treasurer will receive an email saying we need to transfer X number of dollars for X number of expenses and whatnot. So I don't have an issue delegating that authority to the treasurer. I think it's money related, so it should be her responsibility. However, the request must state the breakdown of exactly what that money is going to pay for, and all the board members should be included in the email so that we at least are aware.
now, how detailed, I was not clear on when I went over this.
Okay.
The breakdown, is it gonna be by categories? Are you gonna expect you spend 89 cents on a box of paper clips here?
No. So the thought process is, I'm gonna use the mattresses for an example. And let's say we approved mattresses and also frames, which we did not, but let's just say we did. So if there needs to be a transfer of $30,000, just saying it's for mattresses, but knowing that we already approved $24,000, well, where's the other $6,000 going? So if we have a transfer of $30,000, well, 24 of it is going to pay for mattresses, 6,000 of it's for office expense or whatever.
What about, we have to transfer 97,000 for operating expenses.
Then it would say that operating expenses, and then it's on the treasurer to know what those operating expenses
They
are.
don't have to give you a line by line ledger.
No, that's what the board meeting's for. At that point, because she's responsible for knowing where the money's going. She is.
Otherwise, you're gonna keep Debbie awful busy.
She's really keeping herself pretty busy on it. But the thought though is that instead of just her being the only one knowing that a transfer happened, all of us should know all the information, period. It doesn't mean all 5 of us are saying, yep, I approve that, or yep, we're having a vote on this. We're delegating that authority to her, but we're in the courtesy copy line just so that we have
She'll have to
situational
send
awareness.
it out as a treasurer.
Actually, Mr. Lawrence would send it. Because right now what happens is he sends it to her saying, I need approval for sending or transferring this much money. And some of the emails would say what it was for, some wouldn't be very specific. It would just say, I need to transfer this. And it was just going to her. So instead of it only going to one person, we're in the courtesy copy line, and we at least have the situational awareness that it happened.
All right.
So are we okay with that?
Yeah.
So as far as the EO's monthly and quarterly report, I'd like to establish what we would like for him to tell us. He's got a lot that he wants to say, I'm sure, but some of that we should be redundant with every month that we know we're going to hear from him. So that is what is in this this next part. And so this, you know, it may not be all inclusive. There may be more stuff we want to add to it, but reports from managers. Do we want to hear from the manager themselves, or do we want for the EO to just tell us, this is what the golf course has done, this is what the RV park has done, this is what the motel has done, as far as the revenue or the activity amongst that? Do we want to hear from managers, or do we just want to hear from him? It's an open-ended question. What do you guys think?
I personally don't need to hear from every manager's report.
Yeah, I think allowing the EO to report that is sufficient. I do have a question though. It's something I don't see listed here, and I kind of want to. I don't want to get ahead, but I'll throw it out there since I already said it. Does the executive officer have monthly meetings with the department managers, or whatever we call them, department heads? Do we know?
No,
I was going to ask him, but he's obviously not here, so I can't.
Sure, one time I think he had a weekly meeting with all his managers.
He does? Okay. I would like to see a short breakdown of those meetings included in, I don't know, maybe his monthly report. It doesn't have to be weekly.
Like a
And
synopsis?
I'm not trying to overburden him. No, yeah. And again, it can be short. Just if there was anything significant that came out of those meetings, I'd like to see that included, because sometimes they do. And I know it sounds redundant. You would think if it was significant, he would be bringing it up anyway, but I'd like to see it spelled out.
Okay. So I'm writing synopsis from staff meetings.
Yes.
If
It can be brief,
required.
and again, if he doesn't have anything for that, fine,
So we'll put if required.
yes.
There are,
Because we can't talk about like actual personnel.
Well, no,
issues
right, and that's
or-
not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about day-to-day work issues. Hey, the golf course manager mentioned this to me, or just anything along those lines, not personnel things.
there is something in outlining his duties in the bylaws.
Right.
That I think keeping the board appraised of any significant issues in that.
Which is letter
Oh,
A.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to review that.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's near the,
It's letter A. It's the first one.
got it.
So it's on page 13.
expectations of the executive officer and speed duties.
And then follow up on any ongoing projects. So what I've kind of noticed is we say, yes, let's do this. And then we don't get a follow up unless we ask for it. So if we just make it common practice that if we've got a project that we've already approved, which we should have a list of all the ongoing projects that we've approved, just follow up on it. Okay, we're on track. Okay, the projected timeline is a little delayed because the weather or people got sick or whatever it is, then at least we have a follow-up on it and we can know where that project is instead of preemptively having to ask every month. Health of our assets, if there's any issues. Like at this next meeting, we're going to get a briefing from the Elite Roofing Company regarding the hail, so, you know. So if we need something monthly, otherwise I think quarterly is fine, like of our buildings and our grounds. This next one, any planned time off that he may have. Planned monthly activities scheduled on the fort for members. So I think that's important for us to be able to say, hey, here's a planned activity. If the fort is hosting it, if the fort is not hosting it, well then we can add that to the calendar that Christina creates. But what I'm referencing more is like if the bar is hosting karaoke or whatever, because that's one of our income producing properties. So we want to highlight that, or if the RV park has something going on, or if there's a ton of vacancy at the RV park, or a ton of vacancy at the horse stables. You know, that's something that's important because it's income generating for us that we want to try to capitalize on, or open houses like the airport doing one in a couple weeks. And the Floral Club, they're doing theirs. I know I screwed Mountain Laurel. I didn't do that.
So just to be clear, when we're talking about him reporting on these monthly activities, we're talking about him putting out what's coming up in the next month?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if something happened, like we're gonna have that flower show, and if it was hosted by the fort, well, let me use the bar. So let's say the bar had like an Irish Fest or something, and it happened already, well, he should tell us, hey, this went well, this actually was not a very good event, we have some lessons learned that we're gonna capitalize on and move forward with. He kinda does it now already, but,
Right.
so it's just formalizing
Okay.
what we want him to make sure he emphasizes.
Okay.
Are there any other things that we wanna hear specifically here monthly?
Not that comes to mind right now, no.
How about any job openings?
Oh, I love that idea.
No.
No, you don't like that? Job openings, so if there's a position that we've got open for employment?
I'd like to include where we've posted for those jobs, where it's been sent out to, whether it was a job board, whether, I don't care, Indeed.com, email, you printed it and put it at the post office. If he's gonna tell us, hey, we've got an opening for this, now he may not have done it already, I understand that.
Right,
He can
right.
say, look, we have an opening for this, it just came up. We're going to post the job in these places. I'd like to know that, because I have no idea where we post our jobs right now, and I really wanna find out, so.
What do you think, Mr. Sheldon?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
So we'll add that. Anything else that we want to make sure?
Yeah, I
That we hear.
proposed, year and a half, 2 years ago, a whole, outline of what needed to be done to fill an open job position,
Mhm.
but it got voted down, so,
Mhm.
Well, we can readdress that. I mean, if we need
I
to.
think you'll cover it fine.
Okay. Anything else? Oh, there was one more thing. Days or time frames that the office is closed.
Ah,
Yeah, so that we can tell people they're gonna be closed in advance. I just thought of that right now. Or
So
limited
you want to
staff.
schedule when the office is open,
mhm.
Well, yeah, because
either way.
because we just don't know, like, I never know, or actually trash pickup too, if it's gonna be if the holiday is on a Monday, if it's really gonna be on
That's a
Tuesday
good
or
idea,
not.
because I'm always at that question, I forgot to
Because
look at the
sometimes-
board, and are they picking up my trash tomorrow or not?
Well, but sometimes they do, and then
And
sometimes they
sometimes they do,
don't.
and and that's fine, but it's
Yeah, but
great
just tell
to
people.
put it out there at the
Yeah,
meeting
okay.
too, yeah.
So I would say that any changes in routine,
Right,
i.e. trash.
and that's a quick thing.
Oh yeah, this is all like quick stuff. It's not hard. And then since we're not going to have as large of a presence here unless we're called, I think it'd be appropriate to get a weekly email, just a standard email every week to the board, stating any major issues, items that need to be addressed, any legal correspondence is general, not detailed, because we don't want to violate any confidentiality or anything like that, or open ourselves up for something getting breached. Any FYI information that we should be aware of, and topics or issues that the EO feels will need to be addressed in the agenda. That way it's not all last minute, it's something we're collectively talking about through the month.
Sure,
What do you gentlemen think?
I'm good with that.
Are you okay with that? With getting a weekly email, just with,
No,
okay. Because some of it may say none, and just.
You might say, I don't have anything to report this week, I don't have any major
Right.
issues, I don't have any,
are we talking about the email addresses?
We're gonna talk about that later, but no, we're gonna talk about that later, but I'm talking about a weekly email from the EO updating the board on major issues needing to be addressed, legal correspondence, any FYI information, topics or issues that he wants to see on the agenda, or that he thinks needs to go on the agenda.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and what's a reasonable day? Friday by 5?
I like Thursday,
Like Thursday?
I do.
Sure.
Okay,
End of the day, Thursday.
Thursday by 5?
Because otherwise, if he does have an issue come up and he's not able to be at work on Friday, we go the whole weekend without hearing anything. That's why I like Thursday better. I think it's a better day
Works
for
for
it.
me.
All right.
No, you're fine.
This phone does whatever it wants.
Okay, and then the next thing is information to be provided in board packets. This is stuff that we know we want every month in our board packets. Obviously, the agenda with any required read-ahead items, the financials, which Ms. Isaacs stated, let's see, the current revenue received, the total revenue received, total expenditures and overages or shortfalls for the month. The budget will come to us in October after we've approved it. So who's that?
That was the phone signing off. I tried to get it to turn off, but it won't turn off.
Sounded like a UFO. And then in April, which we should be receiving this board meeting with where we are with our budget, how we're meeting that budget. So those two items are October and April. And then an itemized list of all the bills paid in the month and which department it falls under. So that's where we're getting more detailed. And she's been working with the financial part of our administrative staff to get that. And then we're going to be getting the bank statements for all of our accounts so that we have that. Is there anything else with the financials that you know you want to hear from her about? Because she's going to be giving a more in-depth treasury report than just telling us bank balances.
Yeah, I'd like to see what she presents at this first
Okay.
meeting before I start throwing extra things on her, you know,
She's
and
getting
go
a
from
plan.
there.
I like what she's been working on. But is there anything additional that you think we need to hear about?
Nope.
Okay. And then we want reports from all income generating entities. So the golf course, the motel, the rental apartment that I found out we had like a month ago. So the status of the lease, the bills, etc. The RV park activity, so occupancy, cost of operations, which I know is a big question. Revenue generated, profit and loss, Dickman Hall bar activity, a synopsis of the number of times each rental facility has been rented, both by members for free, because we have a policy letter that lets people use it for free, and then for events. And what I'm envisioning there is not line by line of, okay, we had an anniversary, we had a birthday party, we had this. It's just 30 days of this month, it's been rented 25 days.
Right, simple.
Yeah, just very, very simple. Hunting metrics, so how many hunters we've had, what income is generated from that. And we started to see that last month with the hunting metrics. If we've got any large groups coming to the fort to utilize our facilities or receive tours, we should know about that. Because let's say we decide that the director on call should go read them and say, hey, welcome, thank you for choosing Fort Clark Springs for your recreational getaway. And, you know, it just gives that nice, open, touristy feeling of, wow, you know, they kind of care that we're here and spending our money, you know. So I'd like to know that. And I think that'd be something that the director on call could be tasked to do. Or if not, I'm happy to do it. But and then a general security report, we get one currently, but I want to make sure that we continue to get that. And then a calendar of events for the month. Christina currently compiles one that is hidden on our website that I found a couple of days ago. So I'd like to just have that print out in our packets.
Are the security members at the gate, do they have that calendar up there?
Probably not.
They need to have that calendar up there, because I've been told multiple times now when there's been an event going on in the fort, the first people they see are the people that they talk to at the gate when they pull up. I mean, fort members, it might be a little bit different, but even us, sometimes that's the first person we talk to. I have a number of members tell me they've asked and the people at the gate don't have any clue what's going on. Well, that's our fault. We need to make them aware so they can give them that. So can we make sure that that happens?
We can add that in our communication policy.
Okay, that would
Yeah.
be great.
So yeah, so is there anything else that we want in our board packets?
I think that's pretty thorough.
Alright, so now to the fun stuff. Communications policy. We had talked about this when we went and talked to the lawyers and got an orientation from them about, I mean, you were obviously there, so you know what they said. But they essentially suggested that we have a communications policy that clearly outlines how we communicate. And when we think about how we communicate, we're thinking about how are we communicating amongst ourselves, because anything we do is reportable to membership. Anything. Our emails, if we wind up in some sort of litigation, any email that we have is now subject to that litigation. So, for that specific purpose, it was advised by attorneys not to have your personal emails linked to this professional side of our responsibilities. So it was for that reason that I asked the court to create fortclark.com emails for us, so that we are removing that liability of potentially I don't know what people do in their personal emails, but for protecting that personal email correspondence that you may have with other people from being added into potential litigation in the future. So that is why we received fortclark.com emails. So there's several pieces to this communication policy, and the first part is correspondence between the board. And so I'm just going to read this, and we'll talk about it. So establish Fort Clark Springs email accounts for all directors for continuity, correspondence between directors, and correspondence with membership, which is also one of the issues. Members don't know how to get a hold of us unless we give them our personal email, which is susceptible to being hacked, also, as we found out twice.
I actually clarify that. I don't know if hack was the right word on our email. We were infected with a Trojan and deal and a spyware and all that, but it came from the Fort's email. It was the Fort's email that you're talking about that was actually hacked. And they sent out an email that came to our email that looked like it came from the Fort with an attachment. And
Somebody opened it.
I hit that and got the whole computer infected.
Well, see, I didn't get one of those.
It was your
So.
GoDaddy email that got hacked, not mine.
Well, and to kind of compound that, we've hired a person that's dealing with all the tech stuff, and that's part of their responsibilities. That's why we're paying them, to make sure that our systems are legit. But as a business, because we are a business, however anybody wants to look at it, up here at the board, what we do is business. We don't do personal stuff, and it's just really important for us to have that clear line of separation of, this is my personal email. I mean, I am completely open to any member wanting to talk to me, but I am not going to communicate on my personal email to a member when they have a concern. I'm just not going to do it. And if it's already been advised to us by 2 attorneys, because I believe it was advised to us by the previous law firm that we had employed years back, then I think it's now time for us to just do it. And then, in addition, the continuity that was the overtone of the address to the association will be easier for whoever comes in next as president or vice president or director, because you can just go look at all the emails and kind of understand the history of what's happened. So that is why we have them. In addition, with the board communicating with each other, please let board members and the EO know when you're out of town or out of pocket, just as a courtesy. So that.
What does out of pocket mean?
Oh, out of pocket means that you're not accessible. So when you're not accessible, just say, I'm in Corpus for 2 days, so don't bug me, or I'm not going to be available to send a check.
Okay.
So that's
Doesn't
what
mean I have to pay for something out of pocket.
If you'd like to pay for something, I'll take your money. Yeah, I'm kidding. I
You
won't.
don't need my money.
No, I get Chris. But that's what that means. So like Bill, for example, if he's called to go out into the field for a couple of days and he's going to be out of pocket, inaccessible, then just say that. Hey, I'm going to be. You don't have to say the specific details. Just I'm not going to be here for these 2 days. And then if if we have to go down the line of who can we contact, well, we know we can't contact you because you're out of pocket. So, so that's just a courtesy, you know, it's a common courtesy. If a board member who is not acting in the director on call capacity goes to the front office to meet with the executive officer or conduct business, please send the full board an email indicating the meeting purpose and when it will occur, just so that we at least know. And then, of course, a recap of what you did, so that all of us know what's going on. Debbie's been doing that with the treasurer when she comes in, because it's good to know too, how often do you have to come in here and sign checks? How often do you have to come and validate transfers, which I didn't even know the treasurer did. So it's just all FYI for us, so that we're all functioning together, understanding what's happening. That's what this is meant to say. Board correspondence between ourselves. So what that means is, and this was one of the things that actually the EO did tell me was something that he would like to see him get the final decision, which I agree with. So while we're discussing amongst ourselves, this is what we want to do, this is what we're thinking, we'll have his input, because I've been asking for his input on items before we even talk about them, because I want to know what his rationale is, or what his position is on something, so that I at least have an idea of what we need to go direction-wise with it. But once we've made a decision of what we want to do, then we include him in the email and say, okay, here's what we're doing. Do you have issues with that? And then if he has any other issues, well, he can say, okay, well, yeah, you guys made a great choice. We're going to do that. That's what I like to see.
When you ask him for the input up front before we deal with the item, is that what I understood you to say?
Yes. So, like, for example, with the properties. When we talk about the properties, I didn't understand what he meant when he had said, hey, I need guidance board on the properties. What do you want us to do with them? And so my question was, well, what are you asking for us to consider? So instead of just throwing a blind email out to everybody saying, okay, let's banter back and forth, and you've seen some of the email correspondence that's transpired between the board, a lot of it is, it's not necessary for an employee to see the board have heated online discussion.
And
It's just not.
Richard specifically asked not to be looped
Yeah.
into all of that debate.
Yeah.
He wants us to do the discussion and then just say, all right, here's what we've concluded.
Yes, and then he has
But we're
his,
gonna do that without his input or insight as you go through the process of discussing it.
Well, once he's given us the input though.
Yeah, he's
Obviously,
gonna-
we'll ask him whatever we need to ask him, but then at some point, we're gonna have to say, okay, we're gonna discuss this now, separate from him. And he specifically asked not to be included in all that,
yeah.
so.
And I think it's great, because as an employee, you should not watch your bosses go back and forth, whether it's positive, negative, whatever it is. You shouldn't be watching that. You should be focused on your job. And then when they made a decision, because we all know it's hard for this board to make a decision. I mean, it just is. There's 5 people. It's 5 different inputs and 5 different sets of experience that come into this. Then we just give him the way ahead. Okay, yep, you asked for us to make a decision on this. Here's your choice. This is what we've decided. And now he has something to go with. So that's that. And then we'll include him in the end. And it will be all the board seeing what the end result is that we agreed to give to him.
Have we concluded the email discussion?
No.
No.
But do you have
Still-
something to say about it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go for it.
First of all, the email address that I've provided and been used for over 3 years now by the board has worked fine with no problems, is not my personal email. I have a different personal email on Google instead of Yahoo. And I will continue to use the one I have provided. Mr. Smullen at one point did exactly what you're doing. He provided us all with an email address for use as directors only, and it was through the same thing, GoDaddy. And it was I tried to use it and gave up, and nobody else ever used it. You didn't use it, Debbie didn't, nobody. And when I tried to use it, it was a real pain. I've got to change my homepage, I guess you call it, and go to GoDaddy and load that up and wait for it to come up, and which took some time, and then I had to go to the fort or something. That took forever to come up, and sometimes did not come up at all. So I couldn't even get into the email or use it. So I trashed it. And I see nothing more secure about your dictated emails than the one that I've already used and provided. And so without bloviating, I would say there shouldn't be any problem when you have in your system the same email that I've used and you contacted me with and the rest of the board has for 3 years, why that can't continue. That's the one I'll continue to use.
Well, first of all, I never got that fortclark.com email. And I asked Ms. Isaac, she didn't get one either. And so when I did go into the president one, that these were the ones that he did create. I went into it, nobody had ever been in it. Nobody had ever used it. There was no usage at all on it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, these are more protected because we're paying somebody to make sure that our systems are not being attacked. So it is a more protected way of communication. I've actually used that email for 2 weeks, or almost 2 weeks, and I've had zero issues with it at all. It's the email server that gets all the email back and forth through administration. And granted, if email goes down, then it goes down for the whole fort. Everybody loses internet connection, and that's just the way it is. So if that comes to that point, then just the way it goes. There have been times when front office has lost their email and their phone capability, but that's something beyond their control, and it wasn't a hacker. It was just fiber lines getting cut or something from the pipeline workers. So our email is actually more protected because of the fact that we're in a contract with a guy whose job it is to make sure that we have no infiltration into our systems. So it is more. And maybe back when you had it at first, it might not have been, because we might not have been in that contract. But now we are. And if this guy can't perform the duties of that contract, then we need to readdress that contract. Now, as far as logging in and everything, I made that PowerPoint that I sent, I actually did it. I made it because I wanted to make sure everybody understood step by step how to do it, how to get in there, how to change your password, because they gave us a generated password. And if you're having trouble with it, I can help you set it up. Like, that's easy. Mr. Hope figured it out. So, I mean, there's hope for him, so there's hope for all of us, you know. Not that he's incapable, but it worked for him to be able to just follow those things. Did you have issues setting it up, Mr. Link?
No. And
Okay.
if I could add something to
Go for it.
this real quick. There is a possibility that maybe on your computer, there could be something in the protection settings in your web browser that could be causing you issues with that. That's a possibility. That might be why when you said you tried to access it, it didn't work. I do want to add something else though. In terms of the security, no email is secure. And the reason that is because if you send somebody an attachment, to your point, with a Trojan virus or whatever, and you open that attachment, it's too late. It doesn't matter what email you use.
But it affects your computer. It doesn't
Yes.
affect everybody.
Correct. Now, well, but some of those Trojans can actually, once they get it, they get your email password, and then they can access it from anywhere. But the side point,
Yeah.
to the point of it being protected legally. If you use your personal email and there's litigation that involves an email, your personal email account is now subject to discovery in court.
I understand that.
So that's part of the concern with this, is it's a protective measure to make sure that your personal email is not accessible. It's the same thing I deal with this with cell phones at work all the time. It's the same exact issue. In terms of, you know, if we're going to pay this individual, it's a contracted person, I guess, to manage this account, and we are having issues with this account, and I don't just mean us at this table, I mean the administration. We need to address the contract with that person, to your point, but maybe we need to address using GoDaddy.com for the emails.
Exactly, yeah.
Other than you, have you received any complaints about it from Richard or anybody else? Whether it's an access issue or whatever it might be.
No, I haven't had any interaction with anybody else.
Okay, so nobody else has brought it,
Yeah.
and has anybody brought it to your attention?
Once again, I'll clarify, the email address that I provided and used is not my personal email address.
No, right, I understand. You made a separate email address for that. I get that, I get that. I like the idea of the continuity from us to the next board, because as you pointed out a while ago, Maria, everything we do is technically discoverable by the membership as long as it doesn't violate some sort of privacy clause. So, that being said, if you leave the association someday and you aren't here anymore, how can anybody ever recover those emails? They won't. So that's why I like the idea of us all using these emails. Now, if this email system's a problem, that's a discussion we gotta have.
Yeah, and that would affect everybody.
Right, and maybe we need to ask the executive officer if he's got a problem or had a problem, whether it's his or somebody else's that he hasn't told us about yet. But barring that, I don't know why we wouldn't all just be using these @Fort Clark email addresses. I mean, you get the vote on it, so you can vote no, but I think this is a good policy to go by.
I don't have a problem with policy, I just have a problem with my using it.
Mhm.
Having, every time I want to check the email, I've got to change my home page and go to,
Well, you don't have to change your homepage. And actually, I have it on my phone. So if you want me to help you set it up, I'll help you set it up. I won't watch your password though. I'll let you
yeah,
use your own password.
and
Um,
the fort won't have access to those emails either, will they?
We actually, if the fort needs to reset the password, they have the ability to.
Because they
So
have the
if you-
administrative access.
If you get locked out of it, they can help you get reloaded back into it.
Well, we both know where we stand, so,
Yeah.
so be it.
So in the correspondence between the board, spouses will not be contacted to communicate with a board member. So if anybody here, I don't know if anyone has, but if anyone's provided a spouse phone number as their primary contact, we're not contacting spouses to get a hold of board members.
No, my wife does not want to be contacted.
Well, nor does my spouse. But, so whatever numbers we're providing, we need to make sure that they are our personal phone numbers, not our spouses. And spouses are not permitted to conduct board of director communications. So that means they are not permitted to write the emails for us and send them. I asked my husband if he would do it for me, and he flat out said no. So, but I think those are reasonable. It's common practice amongst every professional organization. Is there something that we're missing up here?
Well, kind of.
Okay.
I have a house phone, and how can you not, say that my wife can't use it?
Well, sir, you're not actually in this conversation, so we're just going to move forward.
I'm having.
So the next item, so are there issues with that, or anything we need to add to it?
I don't have any issue with it.
Do you see anything we need to add, like as far as correspondence between us? Do you think we need to lay out here?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Do we need to add that we will be able to have an email vote on agenda items? Do we need to add that in here, you think? Or, as we are able to communicate via other communications, and that's either in the bylaws or the declarations, I think it's in the bylaws. So, it would just be, this is just to support what we can already do.
I don't see the need to add that.
This is agreeing to do an email vote on something?
If we need to. Like, it's not, but we've already got that ability to with 209 and with the bylaws. So I don't know that we need to be redundant. Do you think we need to?
Well, I have a question on the phone number though.
Okay.
I have one phone number. Does this mean that I have to go out and get another phone number or get another telephone line?
Well, I actually have a text from your wife where she gave me a phone number to call you directly.
That was one I used
Yeah.
some time ago, several years ago. It was one where you purchased minutes.
Mhm.
It was for emergency. It's been dead and I haven't used it.
Well, that's your only mode of communication. Helen.
That's the only phone number you
Yeah.
have, it's the only phone
It's the
number you
only phone number you
have.
have.
Or even to the point of whoever raised it in the audience. If all you have is a house phone, that's all you have.
Yep, that's all you got.
Can
That's all you got.
I tell my wife not to answer the phone? That'd be all right.
Dude,
That might-
I don't think we have any control over what you tell your wife.
Yeah, you do
That's
it
not our
Better
purview.
chance of that being carried out if you tell her. Don't answer the phone. So when you call, tell her don't answer.
I don't run your household. The point is that if they need to if someone needs to contact us, we shouldn't be calling spouses to contact you.
And
But
I don't
if the
think-
only number you got is the only number you got,
Right.
then that's the only number you got.
You should be aware too that I do not text.
That's fine.
No problem.
Fingers are too big and stiff.
No worries.
No
They do
problem.
have text, talk to
I'm
text
slow.
as well.
That's okay.
But then, no, it's fine. I'm slow too, so no worries. Okay, so then discussion next is communication from the fort to membership. So this is how are we as the fort, as an entity, going to talk to membership? So what is our official channel? Is it the dispatch, social media? I wrote print because you want to talk about print.
Mhm.
But displayed would be the marquee. So are we in agreement that those are our official modes of communication to the membership?
Well, I would think going with the attorney's recommendations at that board orientation with the attorneys in San Antonio, he strongly recommended that individual board members did not have individual Facebook pages identifying themselves with the board to put out anything. And even with the disclaimer on it, as he pointed out, it doesn't make any difference if you do have a disclaimer on there. The general membership, they're still going to perceive that as being official. If it says Fort Clark Springs Secretary John Holt or whatever, and then he says these are only my personal views, people are still taking it as representing the board. So that he strongly recommended that we not do that. So I personally think we should follow with that recommendation.
What was his reason for that, just out of curiosity?
Well, that's not specifically what
The
was said.
reason was is that when you put something on that Facebook page, it's your personal take on the situation, interpretation, opinion, whatever,
Mhm.
and not that of the entire board,
Mhm.
which a communication should be coming from the entire board,
Mhm.
but the members will take it as coming from the entire board. When you now, if you just say William Blank, fine. If you say William Blank, Vice President of Fort Clark Springs Association, even if you put a disclaimer and say, these are my personal opinions and my personal interpretation, and I'm not saying this, is what the attorney
I
said.
understand, yeah.
The members are gonna still take it as the official word coming from the board.
Okay, so it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like the only issue would be is if you specifically spell out your title in connection with the board on that page. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually what the attorney followed up with and said is that as long as we outline in our communications policy how we can do this, it doesn't necessarily make that specific case.
Well, the reason for the change, what he was pointing out, I think, is that you're not legally required not to do that. But
Right.
he's saying it's not a good policy to do it. And actually, what he also added, he said, if you continue doing those things, you're headed down the road to a lawsuit.
If we don't have a communications policy in place, which is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, as far as official channel for the fort, when the fort has something to tell membership, as the fort, as the dispatch, our social media page, which I found a ton of them, and Christina was very kind to identify where most of them come from, and we do have official pages, believe it or not. And so we're going to explore that once we nail this down. We'll explore how we get all of that messaging across. And then the marquee, and then possibly printing something. Would we agree, though, that for official fort communication to the membership, that those are the ways that we do that?
Yes. Unless somebody's thinking of something, carrier pigeon or something that I'm not thinking of, I don't know what else it would be.
So the official communication from the fort should be done how?
I'm saying the official channel, it's a multifaceted, because not everybody's on email, not everybody's on social media, not everybody walks up to the marquee and actually reads it. So it's a multifaceted thing. So dispatch email, social media, which is not only Facebook, but social media, and printed/displayed. Like, when the fort has something to say, this is how we do it.
And the fort will be doing this,
Right.
or whoever.
Well, we're gonna
whoever
decide that
delegated.
right now. Like, that's what we're talking about right now. Like, who is gonna send this? So, ideally, what we should have is a fan page that tourists can like, families of friends can like, potential people that want to live here can like, and then we post events like, hey, 4th of July, we're open, come to the pool, whatever. In general speaking, a tourist fan type page, which we already have. We have one of those. But what we ought to consider is creating a private Fort Clark Springs Facebook group, which is a private group to send specific member-related things through that channel, so that, like, for example, there's a new group for lot owners. Well, it's very similar to that, except this is run by the fort. So when the fort has something to tell to our membership, they're telling it in that forum, and it's coming from us, the entity. And then additionally, Instagram is also another social media outlet that people use all the time, and it's also connected to Facebook. So that is a tourism piece in there with the marketing, and it's all free, so it's free marketing. So I would say that we can feasibly do these, and but unless the majority doesn't agree to that, I think those are reasonable. We already have a fan page, we don't have a member group, and we don't have an Instagram account. Oh, we actually do have an Instagram account. It's magic. It's a magical one. But they would all have the same messaging. So if we're sending a dispatch that says we have a workshop on this day at this time, that exact message goes to the Facebook personal group, like private group of the membership. That way our member stuff stays private. And then it goes to the dispatch, same messaging to the dispatch, like copy paste right there. And then we print it out, display it, we put it on the marquee, and that's the exact message that goes out. There's no variations to that one message. So that's what I'm saying. What do we think?
Sure.
I like it.
Okay. So now,
And
who
does it?
that's the next question. Who's going to do it? My suggestion would be the director on call with the EO, because the director on call will know if something needs to be sent out, and if it's outside of the ordinary, then the director on call can email us and say, hey, this is out of the ordinary, are we okay with this? We can say yes or no, and then that's the official fort message. But I mean, other duties as assigned, I think the director on call would be perfect for that.
Sure.
Good with that.
Okay. EO director. And with the EO, he obviously delegates that to the secretary, and that's who generates.
So it'd be the director on call in conjunction with the EO.
Yes, so it's not director on call saying, I want this out. It's director on call with the EO working together, saying, yep, this message needs to go out.
It could be a reverse situation.
Yes.
Saying, I'd have something that we should put out
Yes.
and coordinate it with the director on call.
Yes, and if the verbiage is shady and we need to get it really nailed down, then at that point in time, the director on call will talk to us and say, okay, hey, we need to nail this verbiage down.
How do we want to send this?
How do we want to do this? And then we all have input on that. So do we agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. The use of the dispatch is solely for communication with membership. And it will be used to provide proactive warnings to membership. So if there's a tornado inbound, we can send that out. Hey, there's a tornado shelter, which I didn't know about, but we offered tornado shelter. It will not be used to project personal opinions or messages, period. And I don't know that we even need to belabor that. And board members, so this is where we're going into with board members. So board members as elected officials, because this is where it's a gray area. And he did say that, the lawyer did say it's not definitive black and white, there's gray. But if a communications policy outlines what the board can do, then there's no reason why they can't. So as far as personal Facebook pages are concerned, board members are elected officials. Every elected official has a Facebook page to communicate to their constituents. Each of us represent a different piece of our diverse community. So we should have access that these members can come to, since they elected you to the board, you're their representative. And you should be able to give them some sort of communication as well. So, to make it very clear, this is what this says. Board members, as elected officials, can have their own outlet of communication with their constituents. Board members cannot speak on behalf of the board, make promises or commit for assets to a member, cause, etc. Must be in compliance with the code of ethics outlined in the bylaws, because that's what we are bound to. Is there any other constraint that we need to add to that for a Facebook page? And it may not even be a Facebook page. You might want to have your own email distribution list, and you may have people sign up for an email distribution list. That's fine. Or a cell phone texting group. I mean, if that's what you want to do, you know, you have the ability to have that outlet to your constituents.
So I'm allowed freedom of speech.
Yeah, it's your First Amendment.
You are, in fact.
Yeah, it's your First Amendment.
Let me comment, please, if you don't
Please
mind,
do,
because
yeah.
I sort of famously created a Facebook group here that I know a lot of people are fans of and a lot of people aren't fans of, which,
You did?
by the way, as of last week, I am no longer a member of. Because I made the personal decision that I was not going to be part of that group on the board. I have no issue whatsoever with people creating their own personal social media accounts. I don't care what title you use, that's up to you. To whatever form of communication, to your point, every politician in this country, at every single level, from local government on up to the federal government, has a social media account these days. I don't think there's one. I mean, if Nancy Pelosi's on Twitter, everybody's on Twitter. So, to that point, I know it's funny, but I'm being serious, seriously. To that point, I have no issues with this whatsoever. I don't see us needing to add anything. I think at this point, it's the same thing as it is for when you create a social media account for anybody. You're accountable to what you say on there. So,
Who are you accountable to? I'm curious that, because Facebook, it has part of its reputation isn't all that good.
right, that is true.
So, and I just asked this out of curiosity.
Well,
you're
just
talking
in
about
general,
Facebook,
okay,
yeah.
so it's no different than if you walk into a restaurant and you start disparaging everybody in the restaurant, everybody can turn around and try to sue you for slander, right? So Facebook isn't any different. It's just a public forum. It's a social media typed forum where everything you say is kind of recorded, if you will. So it's just like sending an email. There's a record of it, right? So if you want to get on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and create an account specifically to, you know, take in information and speak to your constituents or the members or whatever, that's your choice. It's up to you. I see no issue with allowing people to do that. I haven't even decided if I'm going to do it myself. That's why I pulled out of the Facebook group that I had. I don't know if I want to do it. I may just say, you know what, if you want to talk to me, email me or come find me. But yeah, I don't have an issue with that at all.
No, I don't have an issue with it.
But as long as
I
we
don't have to
understand.
have one, though.
Yeah, you don't have to.
No, absolutely
If
not.
you don't want
You
to,
don't
you
have
don't
to.
have to. But you'd be allowed to, understanding that you can't commit anything, you can't speak on behalf of the board, and you have to comply with the code of ethics. So someone can't go on to your personal page, like me, I'll use me, I can't get on there and say, I absolutely hate working with links. I can't do that, because that's
Already?
against the code of ethics. Well, I can't do it. I can't, you know, it's not true. It's not true at all. But I won't be able to do that on a Facebook page. Because we want to keep with these code of ethics. Your
These
phone
are all
is fine.
solicitation calls. He'll finally, it's power off. I got it now.
Got it?
It's turned on. This is a damnedest phone, I don't know. Another one I haven't used for a long time was easier.
It's no worries. So with that being said, since we're going to have hopefully a private Facebook group for our members, I'd like to see us live stream our meetings to that Facebook group.
To the private group,
Yes, to the private group, because we don't want it on our tourist page, because we don't want tourists seeing what happens out here. Honestly, too, our financial situation and all of that is private for just our membership, and so that's a more. Is that you still?
No, that's acknowledging that it was powered off, I guess. It does what it wants.
It's got a mind of its own, huh?
It doesn't listen to me, and it won't listen to you.
It's a workshop. It's not a meeting. But then it would be on our social media outlet as well. And then I would like to still see us continue the YouTube posting as well, because we don't have everybody on Facebook. We just don't.
Right.
But the messaging that we send out via dispatch could have that link. Here's where the video is found if you want to go look at the video. And then it would take us to our YouTube.
Well, the way that you can get to the videos off of the Fort Clark page.
You can, yes.
So are we uploading those videos to our server, or are we just putting a hyperlink to the YouTube video on there? I don't recall which way that works.
I have to look. Do you know?
And are we going to just continue to do it whichever way, and I don't even care which way it is, are we just going to continue to do it the way we've been doing it on that page as well?
Well, it should be accessible on the website.
Right, it should be. I know. I just want to know if we're going to still, because I know we're talking about this. We're just going to keep doing that and this in addition to it, right?
You want to? I think it's great.
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
can talk about that.
Information is good.
We could add this maybe here and just briefly discuss this. So Richard had mentioned to us he would like to see the Fort Clark page adopt a member section.
Yes.
So at some
I
point,
did say that.
a password walled section where members can get into additional things like whatever, I don't know, trash pickup schedules, whatever the case may be. I think we should probably engage with whoever our technology person is and just start to feel out what that's going to take work-wise and cost-wise.
No, I agree. I just wrote it down.
Okay.
So is there anything else with communicating?
No.
I mean, 'cause some of this is lesson learned from what we've seen in the past, and some of this is we're moving forward into the future and doing things we have not done. So what do you think, Mr. Sullivan? Are we missing anything?
No.
Okay, so the last thing is that I asked the office to bring all of our contracts that we're currently in so that we can take a look at them. We're not going to look at them now. But what I'd like for us to do is take time to read them all. Some of them might be expired, some might be expiring. And I'd like for us to identify the ones that we need to start looking at and figure out how do we want to proceed with getting that fixed. If there's verbiage in a contract that you've got questions on and you think we need to talk about, then we can definitely do that. But all of us should, well, we all do now. We all have the contracts. So every contract that we're in, I believe we're missing one.
Okay.
Or did you get it?
No, not yet.
Okay, there's one additional contract we're missing. And again, like any questions that we've got on them, we're like if it's, there's one that's an employee contract, we cannot discuss that here. We can use that at discussion time in executive session. But as we start, I know that we've had usage agreements with specific clubs. We need to look at them. And what I'd like to see us do is as we're moving forward, whatever it is that we decide we want to do, to be fair and balanced for all. And everybody's held to the same standards. It may not be the same cost, but everybody has the same opportunity, and nobody is the quote-unquote redheaded stepchild out of it, or they feel like they are. We don't want that. We want for everyone to be treated fairly. At least that's what I'd like. And I don't know how the two of you feel.
Absolutely.
And I mean, moving ahead, we have several relationships that we need to repair, and I think with this as a starting point for us, we will be on that road to do that. And then there's quite a few relationships that we need to fix. So the rest of this on this last page are things that we're going to have to look at. We're not going to do it right now, but we're going to have to start looking at. And a lot of this is going to be email discussion because it's not realistic to have a meeting just to talk. So I'm going to do my best not to inundate everybody with email, but some of this is going to have to be email discussion. And I'm just going to read those out so everybody knows what we want to do. But we do want to revisit the mission and vision statement. That was actually a request from, or it wasn't a request, it was one of the inputs from the executive officer. I'd like to see us establish some long-range and short-term goals, things that are attainable, that we can actually say, this was our goal, and we did it, and show our membership that we did it. And I'd like for us to establish 3 main priorities to address, and then I'd like to assign one of the directors to be the point on it, to just run with it, and that is your focus. You know, we've got not declarations, CCNRs to fix. We've got, and which I did sign up for. But we've got a lot of stuff to fix. And instead of just having this long list, we focus on 3 of them, big rocks that we can deal with. That maybe we just fix a little few small things with it, but we need to show results, and that's what this board should strive towards: showing our membership the results. And then other items that we do not have policy on, but we need to get policy on. And I'm glad that Mr. Link is using his expertise to provide us a starting point for. But we need to discuss how grievances between board members will be addressed. We need to discuss how grievances between board members and the executive officer will be addressed. Not saying that there are any right now, but we need to be postured in the event that we have to. Grievances on how, discuss how grievances between employees and the EO will be addressed. And then we do want to really nail down the role of the appointed committees, the clubs, the separate entities, our relationship with the city of Brackeville, the county, and what we want to see us work towards. Because we've got relationships with all of them, and we shouldn't have the fort's free for all, but we should have understandings between both entities of how we're going to operate and move forward. And if there's something that they want from us, well, we need to have a process for them to be able to request it. And if we can facilitate it, then great. But if not, well, then we got to be realistic. We can't give the world to everybody, you know. But those are things that we're going to see in email form soon.
I actually have a rough draft of the grievance policy
Look
that I
at
wrote,
you.
and I printed, because I don't know if some people like to read on
Yeah.
a computer, some people like to read this way. I'll email it to you guys too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
It's 5 pages, don't try to read it right now. It's
Wow,
kind of
this is
long,
awesome.
but I worked on it, so you guys can start taking a gander at it and see what you think, and put in your 2 cents, please.
Awesome. Well, is there anything on this that we didn't talk about, that you want to talk about, or that wasn't on here that you want to talk about? There's a lot.
Yeah, not that I can think of, no.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Sullivan?
Nope, 11:35.
Yeah, I know. How's that for 2
We're
hours?
5 minutes late.
I know. I'm gonna blame your phone. That's what I'm gonna do.
We
Yeah.
started 2 minutes late too.
Touche. Yeah. So just so that we are on the same page, I'm gonna take all of the notes from each one of these things, and I'm gonna turn them into separate policies, and then I'm gonna send it to you individually so you can read it. If you prefer a print, then we'll get you a print and you can scribble all over it. But we're gonna prepare to have that to vote on at the
Are there
regular
gonna be
meeting.
minutes of this meeting?
Yes, she's taken the minutes, and then we recorded it, so we have it. So I'm gonna adjourn this workshop. But then I am gonna call an emergency board meeting right behind us, which we're gonna go into executive session. This is something we need to talk about.
You keep pointing behind you. Are we
We're gonna go in that room right there.
That room?
Yeah,
We'll be back. 2 signatures?
of course.
No, Debbie Isaacs signed.
You're out of the meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
I need to turn on this. Did I
Sure,
pick up on
please do.
The calendar of events that you said that
This
you
is
wanted.
your check?
They're already out in paper form.
Where?
They put them out in the admin office, right on the desk there. They put them in, they used to put them in the adult center and the garden park. I haven't checked to see if they're still out there.
Okay.
And the
Can I
other
bring
thing
up
was
2 points that you guys
that
discussed?
you need